Hey, just remember, you're important and particular. Now, I want you to know that there's a lot of people in the world with a harder life than you. And that's okay. A lot of people with an easier life than you, too. So, today's story is about Barbara Amaya, an incredible woman originally out of Northern Virginia. I mean, just a really interesting life. So, it starts off, she's 12 years old, right? Not being treated well at home. And she's just this is back in the day, okay? This is back in the day. And she runs away from home. Then she gets, I guess you could say, caught, right? She goes to different foster homes and she moves around, moves around, moves around. She's somewhere between Northern and like Richmond, Virginia, right? And she travels back to DC because that's kind of her metro area. That's what she's used to. Now, sitting there waiting for night to fall, she's trying to figure out somewhere to live. Well, not live, I guess sleep, one would say, right? So a lady comes up to her. She seems really nice. Oh, this nice lady, she's gonna help me out, whatever. I say, yeah, come on home, we'll feed you and all that stuff. She gets back to the apartment and there's a gentleman there who turns out not to be a gentleman at all, of course, right? It's not a positive story, unfortunately. So this dude and this woman essentially, I guess, in colloquial terms, we say turned her out, right? You got this 12-year-old girl having sex for money. Let that soak in. What were you doing at 12? Now, they sell her to a dude that brings her to New York. Now, in New York, if you've ever been to New York, there's a lot to learn about, I guess, the streets, one would say, or maybe even the subway system or streets in particular areas, things of that nature. And just lives this really, really hard life. And this is just to give you a scope, right? From age 12, she gets out of this style of life, or I should say, escapes from this style of life when she's 22. Now, I couldn't imagine, and I know a lot of us out there, we couldn't imagine either. And it's one of those things like, you ever say to yourself, I could have never been a slave because I would have done this. I don't know, because I feel like I'm brave, but I'm not always brave, right? So anyway, neither here nor there. So long story short, okay, she's getting abused by this dude. Things that you read like in an Iceberg Slim book, okay. So she is. If do you know Iceberg Slim? If you don't know Iceberg Slim, go read an Iceberg Slim book immediately. Go read an Iceberg Slim book. It'll put a lot of things in perspective. He was on the pimping side, which I don't agree with pimping personally. I'm a big protector of women, black women in particular, but all women because women give life. But that's neither here nor there. So, I mean, things like when she gets locked up overnight, right? And she goes back in order to rest her head. What's the first thing you ask for? What's the money, right? The quota, no one's exempt from the quota. And she gets beat with hangers, twisted up hangers. Again, read Iceberg Slim. It would give you a good idea of the abuses that a lot of women who were on the quote unquote track have gone through. Even though he's the guilty one he's the offender, it will teach you a lot of what's going on. The book in particular, I want to say is My Life. It's like life story, the biography, basically, of Iceberg Slim. But anyway, either way. So she's getting the heck beat out of her. Life is hard, and she gets into drugs because to cope for your day to day is hard when your day to day is horrible. So she's addicted to heroin. And if you've ever been into any type of drugs, again, love yourself. And you can always get out of any type of addiction. Side note. But if you've ever been addicted to any kind of drugs, you know that time without that particular drug, an alcoholic knows time without a lot of drinking is hard time, right? So every time she gets locked up, she goes into this, pardon me, She goes into like remission, right? And it's just, it becomes addiction. If you know anything about addiction, addiction is all or none. Like crackheads stole their own mama's purse, that kind of stuff, right? So the only thing that seemed to really get her away from the fear of this pimp is the love of heroin, right? And I hate to say it this way because I don't want anybody to think that I'm promoting to do drugs. But what I'm saying is it's like a split in the road: fear of a pimp or love of heroin. Love of heroin wins out. So she essentially escapes the pimp through love of heroin. Okay. Now, eventually, that monkey on her back got a bit too heavy. And she eventually decides, hey, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get clean. Now, when she goes to the center to get clean, and I'm missing a lot of details, I'm doing this story no justice. Please check her out, Barbara Amaya. Google it and then watch it on YouTube. So, Barbara Amaya looks this lady, the secretary, she looks her in the eye, right? She's looking her in the eye. And for the first time in her life, she feels like she's looking at somebody who's looking back at her with a level of respect that's on their own level, right? Because don't forget, she got abused at home, which is why she was taken away from her home in the first place. And she's been out on the streets, the track, since age 12. So at 22, she's looking this lady in the eye and she finally feels seen. You know, you ever heard someone say that I finally felt seen? She finally feels seen. And it turns her life around. The front desk lady actually, don't know how, finds out that Barbara has a sister still around. Barbara ships out of there, takes a train, never looks back, never goes back to the DC area, right? Now, I tell that to say this: some people's lives are better than ours, some people's lives are worse than ours. You're important and you're particular, okay? Never let any piece of trauma be what is your undoing for good. Take care of yourself. Now, she is now a public speaker. She's amazing. She was a keynote speaker for Wave. If you don't know anything about Wave, look it up. Women Against Violence, super cool. Just women helping women, right? Because as a male, you might want to do something for women, but you can only be an ally. You can't be the thing, right? Because it has to be your own that really push you into where you need to be. You can be an ally, but you can't be the thing. So I hope that you enjoyed. Don't forget, take care of yourself because you're important and you're particular. Cheers.